Damn.
When you experience some of these things, when it's like, I have a pile of paperwork on my desk and Mayim says to me, let's go through that paperwork. Let's get these forms filled out. It's not about motivating myself more. Like, I really have to get all my skills, abilities, my energy in the right spot. I have to like mentally game for it. Like, going through that level of paperwork is so much harder than doing something that's creative that I could spend hours on.
Right, but that doesn't pay the bills.
It does, actually.
No, it doesn't. What I mean is if you have a stack of bills to be paid, literally, right? And of course it's not as fun or engaging and it's very hard to get motivated. We had to go to a party. We got to go to a party and it was kind of a work party. But when I stepped foot into the place where I could see the people on the patio at this party, my foot would not hit the ground. Like, you know, when you take a step, my foot stopped midair. It was like, we cannot go one further.
And I just want to paint the scene for people.
What was I looking at that was so horrific?
Maybe 10 people sitting outside on a beautiful patio, all nibbling on some tacos, and then like another 8 people sitting together, just like each, and there wasn't like communal conversation. Like everyone was in a little pocket having a conversation, and it looked like Mayim was about to step onto a stage with 100,000 people with no speech prepared. You were shaking. You looked at me like I was torturing you. And you turned to me and you said, we have to, I can't, no, this is, like, I don't even know that you formed sentences.
Okay, Valerie, what did you get on your quiz?
I got 12.
Oh, look at this. Look who thinks she's a big deal over here. 12. All right, well, you may not understand what I'm about to say because you only got 12. Those of us who are at like the 17 and above set, Valerie, if you were looking out at what Jonathan described, because I know that this is a place where you and I line up, what about that sounds like it might be a problem?
It's they already are in their little
There we
bubble
go.
talking about their things.
Okay, yes.
I don't know if I can cut in. And then they stop mid-sentence and look at you like, what are you going to add to this conversation? Why
so
are
we've
you
got
here?
huge social fear. But for me, literally, when Jonathan said the sentence, what were we looking at? 10 to 15, too many people already. It's already too many people. You said they're lounging. They are in a level of comfort that I am not in. It's a beautiful patio. I don't have a beautiful patio like this. What am I doing here? Eating tacos. I got to eat in front of people. What if I like choke, drool, wipe my hand on the back of my like face, like the way that I eat? What if my mouth is open? That. Also, everybody was in their own thing. Exactly what Valerie said. So everything you said that sounded lovely was like molten lava bubbling. It's like Mordor. I'm looking at Mordor, the Eye of Sauron. Like, it's like terrible.
There was also a fantastic food spread, which I think also disturbed you.
Well, the veggie tacos were mostly potato. And so like, that's just a potato taco. But no, eating in front of people, the whole bit. And, oh, are you vegan? I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. It actually turned out to be very nice. But I felt like I was like holding my best smile. It was very lovely people, I will say.
Let's talk about the strategy that you used to go from that initial experience to settling in, picking a spot, and having quite a lovely time that you seem to settle in on.
So in the past, it would have been alcohol. Like, I think for a lot of people, it was not. There was no alcohol. I was looking for like, you know, when I saw potato chips, I was like, that's my friend. That potato chip is going to make everything better, which is not a great coping mechanism. I was going to like treat myself to like a lemonade or like a fun drink, but that would have involved saying hello to more people in the drink area. So I avoided that. What did I do? I stayed close to you. I made clear that it was important that you not leave me and go socialize with people because I didn't want to be left alone.
No, I don't like socializing by myself.
No, but sometimes you know people, you know, so like you could have gone places. But what did I do? Yeah, I mean, I tried to like focus on breath, crying, sitting.
Did you tell yourself that this is going to be okay? Did you have a narrative, a CBT reframe?
I had the memory that I have my own car if I need to leave, meaning it was important for me to know that there was a potential way out. Yeah, and I also didn't force myself to do things I didn't want to do. I couldn't push myself. we like to play cornhole. There was a cornhole set, but I wasn't prepared to like leave my couch and that position that we found. I did find people that, I did know a couple people. So at least that was like a little bit of a touch point. And then something really funny happened, which is kind of an aside, which we'll talk about relatively anonymously. An energy practitioner that I have sought counsel for happened to be at this party and I didn't know. And I don't like seeing therapists outside of the place of where they do work. And so fortunately, we were towards the end of us being there, but there was no way I wanted to be socializing with this person who like knows a lot of deep, dark things and has like hovered hands over me. So that was also, it was pleasant. But like when I used to go to therapy, like if I saw her heading to the bathroom, I'd be like, I no longer have to urinate. I will never urinate again because I will not walk into the bathroom if she's walking into the bathroom.
Look, what I'm hearing is that you had an experience, you had a strategy, you had mechanisms to help you through it, and also you know your boundaries.
That is true.
Mayim, talk a little bit about the idea of how neurodivergence may connect to empaths or people who are highly sensitive people.
I think as we've talked about, kind of which pathways are more emphasized in different brains, I think that for people who are neurodivergent, I think we're talking about brains that, maybe paying less attention to things that, let's say, normies would pay attention to. And that means that they are, technically opening up pathways that make them more available to tune into other things. I think there's still a lot of research to be done. And again, we're dealing with a super broad umbrella when we talk about neurodivergence. But look, the work that Kai Dickens has done with the telepathy tapes is also opening up a conversation about what happens when you're nonverbal. What are the other avenues that have to open up? Does it open up other perceptual abilities? Sounds like yes. What's the reliability, predictability, and consistency of that remains to be seen. But I think some of these conversations that the telepathy tapes has brought both us and the larger community is kind of saying, what do we know about how the brain wants to process, especially when there are supposed deficits in other areas?
It's really interesting. And the highly sensitive, especially to clothing and especially to environment and to sound, is an interesting correlation that we're seeing in people who have these differences.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, I have children also. So we've also seen how different, young people are treated when they have these concerns and requests. Many people have accused many pockets of our society as being privileged in thinking about these things. But, when I think about my dad, like, gosh, I wonder what his life was like as a kid. I wonder how many problems he had when he was younger that nobody knew, and how many generations of people, right, have been overlooked for their need for support and acceptance and safety, around these things.
That's a really important point. I think one of the greatest things you can do for a child is see who they are, recognize the things that are inherent about them. Obviously, we're not saying that no child should develop skills that they don't have, but see what's inherent, see what they need, and try and help support them with the largest amount of acceptance. So if they're never going to be the student who is the most normie, who is the best at reciting information versus thinking creatively, thinking outside the box, identify who that child is and give them the support they need.
I want to talk about, just briefly touch on some of the challenges of, what we talked about before. What's the difference between validation and, over pathologizing our human existence? There was a recent study that we were looking at social media as an incubator of personality and behavioral psychopathology, symptom and disorder authenticity, or psychosomatic social contagion. So the notion being, and this is a quote, more diluted identities become, the easier they are to co-opt and commodify. Keeping users engaged in the short-form visual world of TikTok and Instagram requires creators to flatten their identity. Context is removed, symptoms are generalized or even fabricated to the point where they apply to anyone, which is a tempting invite for the growing majority of people struggling to keep up with capitalism's rising demands. So in many cases, the challenges that one might feel from being neurodivergent, from having trouble keeping up with life, work, schedules, routine, all these things, it may be causing people to aspire to over-identify. And maybe they do identify, but what does it mean? How much of your identity does it become, as opposed to who are you really? What are your strengths? What are the things you want to work on? Do we just throw up our hands and say, well, I'm neurodivergent, there's nothing I can do? In many cases, there are things we can do, even if it comes down to how does caffeine interact with your neurodivergence? How does medication that you may want to look into affect it? The other thing I wanted to mention is what this finding in the Journal of Comprehensive Psychiatry found is that teenagers' exposure to these things, so young people's exposure during certain phases of personality development, raises the likelihood that they will develop symptoms of disorders that they're seeing online. So there's a window. There is a window when we literally can statistically sort of track the likelihood of symptoms emerging from disorders that are being introduced to them. And this is sort of one of the things, and as someone who studied obsessive compulsive disorder for my thesis, everybody loves to tell me that they're OCD. It's their favorite thing. I really like to wear, shoes with laces that are tied perfectly. I have OCD. And you used to always give me a hard time. You were like, Mayim, you're that lady. You're that scientist that's like, please use the right term. But I was ahead of my time, because this is exactly what the kind of fear is, this over-diagnosis or over-pathologizing. Sometimes people are just neat. Sometimes people are meticulous. Sometimes people are fastidious. It may be a diagnosis, but again, if it's not causing problems in your work, your social life, and your general functioning, it may not be something that necessarily needs clinical attention. Is it fun and interesting to find these places of connection, on social media? Absolutely. Does it make me feel less alone when I see these things? Absolutely. Like the dude vacuuming, it made me feel fantastic.
The other thing that people may notice is that they like to have little special objects, things that they carry around. If you're only listening, Mayim has a pointer that she's brought out. And is that actually a new pointer?
No, this is my pointer, but this is my pom-pom. Valerie's got her little alien. I mean, I've got a variety of things here. Fidgeting is one of the main features that in neurodivergence quizzes, they're like, do you have trouble sitting still? Is your leg moving a million miles an hour? I mean, yeah. So this is my pointer. I like unusual things, and I collect unusual things, which also can be on the OCD spectrum. Sometimes it's called collecting items of useless value. And I don't think they're useless. So what happened is this was my pointer, which was just, there's a funny story about this pointer, which maybe we'll tell at another time. But I accidentally sat on my pointer and it broke, and I was very upset. So Jonathan fixed it. I also want to just mention before we close out here, some practical tips. Jonathan, I wonder if you can share. We each have a lot of features, as the quiz showed. We each have a lot of features. Can you name your top 3 things that you think you've done to better understand how your brain works differently and how to see that as a superpower?
Well, number one, identifying the areas that I need help in. So for me, I had to lean in to my auditory processing ability, that I love taking in information in that way. And I had to lean into that and use it across everything I do. And that was like the biggest game changer that has ever happened to me. This next part was really stepping back and recognizing that I have strengths because of these differences that play to my advantage. And so instead of seeing my differences as either a disability or disadvantage, I began to say, everyone is wired differently. This is my unique pattern. And how do I use that to advance the things that I'm interested in? And then the third is identifying the areas that I struggle in, like filling out forms, like doing better when I'm working collaboratively. Early in my career, I realized that I was never going to succeed sitting in a room by myself to write for the rest of my career. I knew I needed to be in a collaborative environment where there was a much more feedback and interpersonal relationships. And so I had to make some very strong decisions to change the course of how I was going to use my skill set to be as successful as I could be. Knowing that while I had once imagined my life as this writer, producing screenplays, sitting down, being creative by myself, who I was, I had to come face to face with that and make the decisions in order to embrace my strengths.
Very nice. I'd say for me, My top three, the first is acceptance, which I do think is much easier, honestly, with how much conversation there is around it. So I'm grateful and happy for younger people and people, who are seeking support in these ways to have that, because it can be very confusing, and, really always trying to fit your, square peg into a round hole can be very frustrating. So I think acceptance, that notion of truly accepting it. What does it really look like to not be in resistance about it? When I think about that question about school, my brain did not work the way other people's brains worked. I had to do remediation on 2 of my qualifying exams. It makes a lot more sense now. Back then, I wasn't in acceptance. I was like, what's wrong with you? And I used it to beat myself up. So the first thing would be to focus on not just being like, I accept myself, but like, what does it practically look like? The second is to find safety. I'm the variety of neurodivergent that has a lot of safety issues. I need to feel safe. If I don't feel safe, everything goes wrong and it'll just snowball. So where are the places that I can find safety? Nature, my religious faith, my spiritual and philosophical explorations that we get to do here. Creativity, that's another really, really safe place. And the third thing, I think there's a lot of, other physiological things to do for safety. Sleep is safety. All these things can fall under this umbrella of safety.